Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, esteemed guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to welcome you all to our Una Europa Talk at the University of Zurich. I'm delighted to host this event as part of the Una Europa General Assembly. Tonight we gather to explore and discuss the important theme, building resilience through One Health. But first, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our moderator for the evening, Evelien van Rijswijk. And you can already hear that I can properly pronounce her last name. Evelien is a successful science journalist from the Netherlands and has been moderating various other talks during the General Assembly and past Una Europa events. I also would like to welcome all our distinguished panelists and attendees, both in person and virtually. This Una Europa Talk is a platform for engaging the dialogue and interaction, and I encourage everyone to participate actively in tonight's discussions. Maybe in very brief words, for those who may not be totally familiar with Una Europa, it's an alliance of leading universities, European universities, working together to shape the university of the future, as we say. And in brackets, that's the coolest university network you can think of. The theme of our General Assembly, One Earth, One Future, resonates deeply with our strategic focus on One Health. This approach emphasizes the interconnectedness of human, animal, and environmental health. This is nothing new, but it's addressing global health challenges requires collaborative and transdisciplinary efforts. And I'm very proud that the University of Zurich has founded a One Health Institute. Being the largest university in Switzerland, we are all well positioned to make significant progress in the field of One Health in collaboration with leading research universities across Europe and certainly across the globe. Our collective efforts will contribute to this. So thank you very much again for your attention and for joining us this evening. I look forward for the insightful discussions and ideas that will emerge from tonight's dialogue. Together, let us work towards a healthier and more resilient future. With that, thank you very much, and I will hand over to Evelien.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael Schaapman. So what is a Una Europa Talk? It's an interactive event that is accessible to external audiences. So welcome the guests from outside. Maybe you are involved, you work in government, or you work in the health sector or in industry, also if you're watching online. We have a panel discussion. I have a wonderful panel that I will introduce to you. But it's also intended to invite engagement with you. So maybe this morning when we also talked about One Health and specifically One Health literacy, you had some questions and then we didn't have time. You can ask your questions tonight as well. So please engage. We focused this morning on One Health literacy, and now we will focus on building resilience through One Health, and also in working together with partners outside of university. Let me introduce my wonderful panel members. They're sitting over there. And then, of course, you will cheer and clap and give them a really, really warm welcome. Bruno González-Zorn, Andrew Kambugu, Owen Petchey, Elizabeth Stark, and Andrea Winkler. Give them a warm hand. So your names are there as well, and also where you are, where your affiliation is. Oh, you switch, yeah, the name placard. So we also have your photos here, so no worries. Take a seat, and if you want to talk, grab a microphone. Elizabeth wants to stand, right? Yeah, it's convenient. Yeah. We will talk about the importance of One Health. How do we work together with partners, both within university but also outside of university, the challenges and the hurdles when it comes to One Health, and also how can we have more impact with One Health, and also maybe turn scientific findings into policy. So that's what we're going to do in this panel discussion. And of course, there's room for you to ask plenty of questions. Let me start by asking the first question on the importance of One Health. Owen Petchey, what would you say is the importance of One Health? Maybe also for the more general audience that has no idea what One Health is.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm actually a biodiversity scientist. I've been leading what's called a University of Zurich research priority program, which is where the university puts a significant amount of funding into an area of research that's deemed to be of strategic importance and societal importance. The one I led was global change and biodiversity. So I'm not actually the best of us to describe what One Health is and why it is important, but my impression is that One Health is reliant on a systems approach. That is an approach that looks at the interdependencies among actors, among parts of the physical world, among parts of the biological world. Biodiversity is my particular interest. Looks at the interdependencies between those, the feedbacks that are created by those interdependencies, and tries to understand how that system functions, so uses a systems approach towards those kinds of problems.
Aren't you the best person to ask this question?
Maybe, thank you. It's just that we haven't used the One Health framework to frame what we've been doing in this research program for the last 12 years. Mm-hmm. But I think actually it does really fit quite well, and particularly also particularly because we're very interested in the importance of biodiversity for humanity through the ecosystem services that are provided by biodiversity to humans, but also on the relationships between biodiversity, between nature and people, the nature of those relationships, and how many of those relationships are actually fundamental to human health and well-being, physical health, emotional health, and social health.
Yeah, so, and this is how we can build resilience.
Yes, through actually ensuring that those relationships are conserved.
Yeah. Let me also ask you, Bruno González-Zorn. You were already here this morning telling us from the audience what do you find important when it comes to One Health, but could you also explain to us how would you talk to someone who doesn't know what One Health is, why it is so important?
Okay, I would say listen carefully.
What's your elevator pitch?
This is important. So years ago, we thought that for taking care of humans, we had to cure humans and take care of humans. But today, a new philosophy and a new way of thinking has emerged. And now we realize that the health of humans is not only dependent on the health of humans, but also on the health of animals and on the health of the environment. And it is intellectually short-sighted to focus only on one of these concepts. If we only take care of humans, but we contaminate the planet and there are diseases in our animals, there will be no sense. There will be all these diseases and everything will come back to humans. And that will happen if we take care only of one of these scenarios. So we have to take care of all these scenarios because they are completely interdependent. So we, as smart people, we knew that already for some years ago, 20 years ago, but the society and the world has really realized it now with the COVID pandemic. A virus in a bat in China, so what's the importance of that? So it's not important. Let's take care of humans in hospitals. And then suddenly we have seen that this has changed humanity forever. So at least in 2021, March, the world has realized that we have to take care about the virus and the bat in any ecosystem because the impact that may have in humanity may be greater than any other thing that we are studying. And taking this into account, this is how it started more or less. Now, we are also taking into account that the human behavior And the social sciences are crucial also to take care of human and humanity and our health. Because anthropologists know how we behave, what we do, why do we have in Spain so much auto-medication, why are people that don't like vaccination, why are there people that don't want to put the mask. So the behavior of humanity and all the social sciences, the philosophy, and everything comes into this plane equally important than the classical health sciences. So I think that we're in this new way of thinking, which I think that opens a brighter future to us for the rest of the years, because we are taking into account and learning from our past years.
Yeah. So actually, COVID changed a lot. Before, maybe you constantly had to tell everyone, well, One Health is really important, global health is really important, and then COVID happened and everyone felt it, why it's important. Andrew, isn't that ironic as well, right? Like you have all these diseases everywhere, and then COVID comes, and all of a sudden people start talking about One Health and global health.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a clinician and researcher, and while my colleagues were speaking, I think scientists analyze. We feel comfortable categorizing things. Infectious disease, pulmonology, cardiology. And I think we really now have to learn to synthesize, to kind of put things back. And I think that's what One Health is teaching us to do. And coming from Uganda, where we have a plethora of infectious diseases, I think you can call Uganda a kind of a laboratory for infectious pathogens. For example, there's a virus called West Nile, which is a region in Uganda. You take a disease like anthrax, which can be transmitted from cattle to humans, but also which stays in the environment in terms of spores for many, many years. So a disease like this really makes the point that you can't really confine yourself to human health, or you cannot really confine yourself to animal health. This really requires not just a whole of science approach, but actually now, what really COVID taught us is the importance of the whole thing, humanities. I think the one thing I want to say before I pass this back to you is the issue that COVID highlighted around trust and communication. As scientists and as universities, do the societies where we work trust us? Do they know what we are up to? And my own university at Makerere, I think what my institute is teaching the university is to descend the ivory tower and go into the trenches and try and fix some real-world problems. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Andrea, we talked this morning on One Health literacy and what One Health is. We are now talking on maybe also how we can reach the more general audience on One Health. Do you see a shift in the attention for One Health, global health, or is it still focused on diseases a lot?
No, thank you very much, Evelyn, and I 100% second what was just said, absolutely. So there was a game changer, as you said, it was COVID-19, and One Health has been around. As I mentioned this morning, the concept of One Health has been around for a long, long time. It's not new, but now it really receives attention because we are scared of a new pandemic. And One Health is still very focused on infectious diseases, right? So that is when institutions invest into One Health, they really invest in pandemic prevention, preparedness, and always with the new buzzword, which is deep prevention. Very deep prevention before the pathogen establishes itself. And then for that, you need data integration. But definitely, One Health, now just come back to your question, is receiving a lot of attention. I can only say in Germany, and I'm not even talking about Africa because it has received attention before the pandemic. So here in Europe, in some countries, I would say, it receives more attention now. But the concept and the understanding is slightly different from before. So it's the broader concept now. Yes, we have to work together. We need to find common solutions. We need to be respectful. We need to really work across also sectors. We need to come closer together. And it is really surprising. Just a quick comment on politics. The EU elections. I scanned all the programs of our main parties in Germany, and not a single one had health as a topic, let alone One Health. Not a single one after pandemic had health as a main topic. So I think we should not be idle. We need to go on and even make more noise and advocate even much better than we have done so far.
Yeah. So maybe even it was just a short amount of time after COVID-19 we thought we should really do something, and then already there's less attention for it.
I think there's a danger that this will go like this.
Yeah. Let's also talk about how are we going to improve the One Health approach and make sure that we work together with partners as well, such as the partners that are here tonight. Elisabeth, how should we grab all these partners to work together with universities or with Una Europa? How do you do that?
Thank you very much for the question. Andrew just mentioned the role of universities, because we are, well, sometimes maybe in the tower, but we should step down, and we are, in a way, we are doing empirical science. And so we are like honest brokers. That is one buzzword you frequently hear, but I take that seriously. We can be trusted. I know there is a crisis of trust in science, so that it's from our creation of knowledge that this movement can step out. And especially we talked this morning about innovation. So it's very important that you have the scientists and that you have basic science also here, so that the collaboration, for example, with industry can become trustworthy. Yeah. I think the most tricky issue is science policy. So really to make people understand, as Andrea just said, how relevant the topic is. That is another task that we have to do and that we can do. But I think this takes more effort that we do at the moment.
Yeah. And what are the hurdles when it comes to working together with all these kind of different partners and different sectors?
I would say that it's still fragmentation. So here are all people, I think most of the people here in this room are working interdisciplinarily, but that is not how our institutions are articulated. So we think in credit points and in budgets and in institutes. Yeah. And
that's not how the world works.
That's not helping. That's why we also need some brokers or some communication people and cross-sectorial also institutions, departments in universities, helping to bridge from a multi or interdisciplinary point of view communication with the outside. And I think that is really these are central services that are necessary to speak about the topic, to bring it to the forth, and to have really an active dialogue with that.
Thank you, Elisabeth. Owen, what do you need when you are working together with maybe non-university partners?
I wanted to add something.
You want to respond first?
I think, to add something.
Yeah.
I think in that sense, Una Europa is an opportunity. It's an opportunity because our universities are constructed on the ancient basis. So we have like the Faculty of Medicine and it's not so easy to teach interdisciplinary. Because you try and to organize a One Health, and if you do it in the medical One Health day, and you do it in the medical school, and you will have medical school, some vets, some biologists, but it's very difficult to make it very interdisciplinary. But Una Europa is very broad. So I've been teaching One Health in Una Europa, and the students that were logging in were from law, anthropology, economics, and whatever. So it's a great opportunity because here we even don't ask who has studied where. I don't know where my people from my steering committee of Una Europa, it's not important for us whether one is in the vet school, in the med school, in the whatever. We're really here working together because we are like constructing something from scratch. And we are doing it in a One Health scenario already very imbricated, very interdisciplinary from the bottom and from the beginning. And I think that's a great opportunity because that allows us to start speaking the same language, talking about our same problems, seeing the problems that we have and for the next years. But we are already starting much more up than our own universities that are really a bit more conservative traditionally. So I think it's a great opportunity.
You have to learn within university and then maybe also apply it to outside of university. Yeah. Owen, how do you prefer to work together with partners outside of university? How do you use them in your project?
Well, I think what's obviously very important is to have a common goal. And I think that's not always quite so easy because of the different incentives. I was trained to publish research papers and to get funding. That's how I have grown up and how I work. So it's actually really difficult to change and value different things because it's my identity. And so I think what I would need is even more time. To do an even better job is more time and more training. And what we need to do is to make sure, if we really want researchers to be more active outside of universities, to make sure that we include that in our incentives right from the start.
I think that's really honest of you to say, right? This is how I'm trained, and it's actually quite difficult maybe also to work with partners outside of university.
I mean, it's particularly the case in the field that I'm in, ecology, because we don't have so many spin-offs. It's not an area where we make a product which has huge economic value and we make a spin-off or a patent. So I don't speak for every discipline, but particularly in the one that I'm working on.
Yes, you want to respond?
I would like to generalize that. You're completely right, and maybe Una Europa can also help to change our assessments. Assessments sometimes are really hurdles for interdisciplinarity. And also, as you see, then the communities stay inside their assessment criteria, and we have to free, I think, researchers from this burden. I mean, it's also a pleasure, of course, to publish and to have PhD students, but then to add new additional ways to interact with society, to reach out to partners and so on. So I think assessment structures can also maybe be reformed.
Let me ask Andrea, and then I'm moving to the audience already, so I'm not asking you to ask questions at the end, but you can participate meanwhile. Andrea, what's your experience with working together with different partners, maybe also outside of university, and when is it a success?
So I couldn't agree more with what Owen just said. To really work in an interdisciplinary way, it can be, and I said it also this morning, very painful, because it reveals a lot about yourself, and we need to become humble and also, walk this extra mile. So people have to be ready for that. But out of the academic world, communities usually are very keen to be part, especially also in the global south. My experience is from a lot of many years of work in sub-Saharan Africa, that without the communities, it's virtually impossible to create change or progress, or even to implement sustainable interventions. I'm not sure whether Andrea could agree. So the community needs to be part, whatever the community is, whatever civil society is, we can redefine it for each project. Of course, political leaders, because of the policy translation, and just picking up on what he said, also the measurements, Elizabeth. I think it's very important that we don't just measure on research papers and impact factors. Of course, it's still important, right? We have to establish ourselves in our disciplines, but policy outreach or outreach in general, in some universities in the US, for example, it is already a criterion. I talked about this with the Leopoldina colleagues in Germany, and it didn't go down so well. So I think this is really, we need to make a huge leap forward to let this new mindset happen and to do away with fragmentation. And then also what I mentioned before is the private sector. And I don't want to be too long, but we need to reconstruct and reimagine our relationship with the private sector. Because in medicine, it was like, oh no, not again another drug rep, right? But that's the past. Yeah. Now there are very attractive partnerships, and not just because of funding. That also is nice to have, right? But because of true partnership. Yeah. And it can work. I have very good experience with that.
Great. Andrew?
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in with two perspectives from the Global South in terms of other partners. One is working with governments, and I don't know how universities work with governments in Europe, but I can say that in Africa, the government looks at universities as key actors in terms of technical inputs. I sit on several government technical committees, and from COVID-19, I wanted to share the experience of the insight that led to the use of the sample transportation, the national sample transportation, which was confined to humans. And the insight that came was we could use this chain for transportation of animal health samples. So as I speak now, that human logistic system has been leveraged to assist with human sample transportation, especially from a perspective of surveillance. How do we use routine lab samples for surveillance? The other short comment about private sector, I remember at the height of COVID, being asked by private sector players to go to a bar to educate people. It was called raising the bar. But the other point I wanted to make is that people who were making alcohol are now partners with us to make, hand sanitizers for health facilities. So they changed their business model to really assist in helping with infection prevention in health facilities and shops and supermarkets. So I just wanted to give those two instances of engagement. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm looking at you. This is the Una Europa Talk. It's interactive. So please, yes, raise your hand if you have a question or maybe you want to share an insight and also mention your name and which university you're from, or if you are outside of university, in which sector you are. Yes, you were the first. You immediately raise your hand.
Thanks. Colin Scott from University College Dublin. I'm here as a representative of university leadership, but I'm going to draw back to my academic career if I remember it. So Owen started off by talking about a systems approach to One Health, which is about understanding interdependencies between different parts of the health system, between humans and animals and so on. And I was put in mind of systems theoretical approaches which come in many different strands. And I heard all the representatives of science and health talk in different extents about being baffled as to why the priorities arising from the problem identification in health and in science are not being translated into the priorities in public policy, politics, law, society, markets. Mm-hmm. And systems theory gives us some insight coming from the social sciences to say, well, these systems all have different norms and different cultures. Mm-hmm. And you cannot simply reproduce the problem set from science and health into politics and expect it to be heard and interpreted. And actually, if we were in a session on sustainability, we'd have exactly the same issue, that science is giving us fantastic problem identification and urgency around addressing the problems, and bafflement and frustration that politics, markets, society is not understanding, is not doing the things that are required.
Yeah, we know the problem, we have solutions, we have the science, and
no
politics
one's listening.
is not doing. Yeah,
and
is that your question? Like, who do you want?
So the question is how to learn from an understanding of the complexity and the communicational challenge between systems to embed and develop an effective communication of the problem set into what has to be a key part of the solution set, which is society, markets, politics, and law.
Yeah. I think Elizabeth wants to respond.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick response. I think you're talking about intercultural communication. That is what is key. We think we know the topic and we can teach it directly to people who speak another language, metaphorically speaking, who have different problems and so on. And that's why I liked very much that Andrea Winkler stressed this morning already the transdisciplinarity. Interdisciplinary is already very challenging, but then getting outside science and understand the public and society. I don't have an answer to your question, it's just an analysis that I think transdisciplinarity is as important as interdisciplinarity and maybe a younger and still neglected field. because the optimism you described is not justified. We really should work on that. Thank you very much.
So, but then the solution is not just keep on telling politicians, look, this is the science, right? So how do you deal with that?
And the solution is also to unite, to have a common voice. Because there have been many voices talking about One Health, and the fact that we are now a complete alliance that is having one voice is being much better heard. So we are really starting to be an academic stakeholder worldwide. So we are talking with the WHO, with the health agencies in Europe, and in fact we have seen that gap. And I think we are starting to fill it, because we think that microbiologists and scientists, we were very much aware of One Health, but we have to reach the gap to the policymakers, and this is a bit what we are trying to do. And being together and speaking louder is heard much better. So I think that we are going to be much better heard and more unanimously heard than in the past.
Yeah. Andrea?
Yeah, just to add, I think the challenges that you pointed out, they're real. It is important to recognize this and to approach the problem through a co-design way. Also to moderators that really understand the issue. So if you have someone around the table from science, politics and economics or the private sector, you need a good moderator who knows about the different challenges, because there are challenges, as you just pointed out, and moderates that communication that we can find the common denominator of what is really possible at this stage, and then move it from there. So it's really also about One Health communication. That is not the normal way of communicating. You need special skills, and you need people who understand the disciplines, at least enough to be able to moderate with a One Health mindset. And that is the challenge. And we need also that people are really, institutes, sectors are willing to go that extra mile.
But it's also about getting them at the table, not at the end, right? It's not about doing research and then, at one point saying like, oh, look, this is what we found. It's having them at the table in the beginning as well, right?
Yeah, so we scientists make all of these facts, and why aren't people listening to us?
Yeah.
And I was wondering why Obama didn't put on his list of influential publications one of my papers.
I can imagine.
Great, important stuff in there. But there was a book there, The Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson, and I think, and I was just at the World Biodiversity Forum organised by the University of Zurich and VSL, the ETH domain, yesterday, and there was a talk there by Thijs Bierstecker, and he said the thing that we're missing is creating an emotion as people and creating feelings. So what we need to do is go from those facts to emotions and feelings, and he was showing how he does that with his art. And one can do that with narratives in books. I think Ministry for the Future has been extremely influential in how I think about the world, and other novels by Kim Stanley Robinson and sci-fi novels. So I think actually, and some scientists can probably do this, but I think there's a really kind of big gap in getting from the facts to creating emotional changes in people and real feelings about we should be doing this. Yeah.
And maybe One Health can be a vehicle, because if you have like the disciplines, they don't have emotions, right? But One Health is global health is a story maybe already.
Yeah, and with a system, it's kind of more interesting in a way, because we can get surprises, we can get win-win-win situations. So I think that, there can be really deep, moving narratives that come from thinking about a One Health perspective, rather than telling a story about an individual pathogen, which can be done fantastically as well, right? But yeah.
Some people are passionate about pathogens, right? We have plenty more questions. Let's see. Yes, over there. And please mention your name and university as well.
Yeah, my name is Rebecca Sauer. I'm here based at the University of Zurich. I'm a humanities person, but I will not ask a humanities-related question.
Oh, you can.
We have heard that the education of medical staff is still very much disciplinary, and how should we go about in curriculum reform when it is about transdisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Andrew, would you like to respond, maybe? Not yet. That's also an answer. Not yet. Who wants to respond?
Maybe I can start. I'm Vice President Research, but I know that we will undergo a huge curriculum reform in the medical studies. But I think there is also, I mentioned communication. It's about language. It's about finding a common language, as we said. So I think that we have interdisciplinary collaborations here, and we have to think it more thoroughly. I think also in Owen's URPP, there is a connection. There's even a lecturer really between the humanities and the sciences, and these people, I think, will become more frequent. They will stop, hopefully, being outsiders or exotic people, but just bridging the disciplines and also then teaching from the very start these fundamental skills and ways of reflection. Thank you very much for that question.
Or get out of the classroom, right? As well, yeah. Bruno?
Well, that's one of the challenges of Una Europa, because we are an alliance of universities and we are really talking about it, how to include it in our disciplines. We are starting to do it for now as we can, and this is the summer schools, for example, and the summer schools One Health summer schools that we start next week. We pick up students from all different disciplines, from all different countries, including Africa and also Latin America. So we are starting to do it there, but the challenge is to include it in all curricula. When I say all, includes anthropology, communication, economics, engineering. You say engineering? Yes. In a hospital in Ghana, I realized that the bacteria were going to the river and everybody was drinking the bacteria from the hospital. So how do I improve health there? I'm constructing a wastewater treatment plant in the hospital, a local one, and with that, so I'm not treating patients, but I need engineers. So we need really all disciplines to tackle diseases all over the world from different approaches.
Thank you. Not yet?
Yeah. So the thought I had was coming from a university. So my institute is within a large public university. I guess the question is, how does the university reward faculty? And as you said, publications and grants. Yeah. So the issue is, and here I'm speaking as an outsider to the Una Europa Alliance, is whether the alliance is willing to have additional criteria across the network for faculty progress. Does somebody get some extra marks for fostering a transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary group? So really, as an outsider, I'm just putting that out there, whether this alliance is an appropriate vehicle to rethink the criteria for faculty progress.
Yeah, it's a different way of recognizing what is science all about, what is research about, what is teaching and education about, right? There's a different way of erkennen en waarderen, it's called in the Netherlands, like a different program of recognition and rewards. Let's see, we have some questions here and there. Yeah, you can go first and then...
Günther Ziegler from Freie Universität in Berlin. I wanted to ask how large is the problem and what are we talking about? I must say I get a bit nervous, Bruno, if I hear sentences that start with "the solution is," with respect to a question. So if COVID was a game changer, are we still talking about one health and really thinking one disease, and resilience is that next time we are quicker to get the virus and have a vaccine and know how to produce the mask? Or are we talking about one health, where health is much more than just preventing the next epidemic? And then probably we have to talk about not only diseases, but we have to talk about nutrition and water and all that. Yeah. And I'm saying that here in Switzerland, where of course, some people think that feeding the world with bottled water and milk powder from Nestle is an answer to One Health in Africa, and I guess we all know it probably isn't, and there is no simple answers. So how large do we see One Health if we really talk about health and not only about no disease?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question.
Don't get nervous.
The solution is...
This was just an example. So that was only an example of the past. You know, of the past we were thinking of only transmission, diseases, and we thought that this was One Health. But One Health is much more, as you just said, and we are acknowledging it.
I feel I should say, COVID has made us reflect on One Health, let's be honest. We had a symposium here in Zurich on One Health, and I see a former president here. And even those of us who were convening the meeting felt we were maybe being alarmist. But I think COVID-19, if we're honest, really brought the point home. People died, economies ground to a halt. And I agree that we have to think about the latter, but let's use the momentum that has been generated by COVID-19 to really push the agenda.
But you could also say, of course, the way we are killing animals and you know, like the markets, it's like the hardest part maybe to say we should stop eating meat or eating less meat, right? That could also be a solution to prevent pandemics, but also for One Health and a better animal health and planetary health. But I guess we keep on coming back to this preventing of diseases and not really tackling maybe the really difficult issues.
If I may answer, I showed this morning that metabolism, so nutrition, is one of the foci also of our One Health Institute, and that is what Günther asked directly. So what do we eat and what do animals eat and what happens when we eat animals, and all these kinds of questions are asked, and I think they are now integrated into the One Health agenda, transcending the disease-oriented approach. So I think the problem is huge, but I don't lose hope.
But is there awareness as well on like really tackling these difficult issues, Andrea? But political issues as well, right? Eating meat and so on.
Yeah. So absolutely. I just wanted. I come back to that. Just wanted to also reply on that quickly. The colleague from Germany, from Berlin. I fully agree that we talk too much about diseases. We also, I mean, food is just the food system, food safety and food security, right? And big food. That is a One Health topic, and it has many entry points from different sectors and perspectives. But that would be another symposium, I guess. Also, what I would like to pick up, I think your question is very timely, that we have to go even beyond humanities. We need architects who build urban cities that are really resilient in terms of urban One Health. The problem is huge, but also we need to be precise, because if you say the solution is, we need to have evidence. And not sure whether you were there this morning, but I also mentioned we don't have a lot of evidence. We have evidence from rabies, we have evidence from brucellosis, and we have some COVID-19 evidence that prevention is 1/3 of the preparedness. Costs and prevention obviously is a One Health approach, because you need to prevent in the environment, in vectors and animals and in humans, but if the pathogen is in humans, then your cost is exponential. So and I would really call out for, if we have economists, work with us to establish good evidence, so return of investments, etc. It's not really shown. We also talk about the added value, and that is really rather loose when you talk about added value. And it's not just finances. It is also about, for example, ecosystem services, to maintain ecology and services that can have a benefit in other non-financial ways. But that is tricky, and it's also about the degrowth and growth and degrowth economic approach, and this is really getting us into political discussions. But this is a void, it's a huge gap. This will be flagged by the Lancet One Health Commission report. We need more data on this. And we can't say the solution is, not yet.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. We have a question here. Yeah.
I'm Antonio Maturo from Bologna University. I'm a sociologist, and I think that social sciences should be more vocal in this discussion. That's why I had a glass of wine at the aperitif. And what I was thinking is that the COVID, we used in sociology of health, starting any lecture with chronic diseases, when the epidemiological transition, and we said, infectious diseases are not important anymore, and chronic diseases are the future, and then COVID arrived, and we had to remake all the slides. And in chronic diseases, we stressed the importance of social justice, of social inequalities, because chronic diseases are related to social class. Obesity, pulmonary diseases are related to lifestyles. And also COVID, stroke hit people. Syndemic is a fancy word, but it means that there is a combination between an infectious disease, which apparently at first sight is democratically distributed, but on chronic conditions. So poor people were hit stronger than the better off. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I see that we stressed the importance of resilience and of health literacy, but I think we should not consider these two notions as toolkits. These two concepts should be applied and developed into a social context, because they can be developed in different ways according to social justice. Poor people have more difficulties in becoming resilient. Or
how would you incorporate that into
a question? The question is, do you agree with me?
That's the classical one. Do you agree?
Maybe I can answer. I showed this morning that actually we think these things together. It's still there in different funding lines, but equality of opportunity is one of our topics as well. And as I said, also many of our social scientists and economists ask to be part of the One Health community, as is the case, as you said, also in Una Europa. So yes, we do agree. Still, it's a challenge to really put that in place in education and research, and also to find the funds. But of course, content-wise, that's exactly the way we will go.
How do you deal with the top, since we're talking about building resilience, what is resilience according to you within your field? Because probably you also use different words, language, and so on. What is it? Who wants to go first? Yeah, sure.
Usually it's said that it's shock resistant. Resilience of a system is that the system is resistant to shocks from outside and can sort of self-modulate and come back to its strength. So resilience is not a new word as well. So it's resistance to outside events, but of course they can also be inside, right? And resilience is a very important word, and very often it's put at the same level as One Health and planetary health. I mean, we haven't talked about planetary health, but maybe we shouldn't, because it then becomes very confusing, but we have almost the same aims. But the chronic diseases, to include those into a health system, creates resilience. And now after the pandemic, we have a surge in chronic diseases. Lots of prophylaxis appointments or prevention appointments had been missed, etc. So we know it's not just about infectious diseases, the chronic non-communicable diseases that need to be included in the full picture when you talk about health system resilience. Resilience towards shocks like a pandemic. So build strong health systems, and then you have a better return when shocks from outside happen.
Is it really being resistant? Because if it happens, then you have to be resilient, right? Is it? Yeah. Yeah.
You come back to. So you may go down first, but you come back
exactly
to your starting point, more or less, or even beyond,
or even better, and then you can learn from it, right? Owen, you want to
cover?
So in my field of research, which is ecology, we've been researching stability of systems, ecosystems, for 40, 50 years.
You're like the inventors of resilience, right?
And there are multiple definitions of resilience, right? But it's kind of like fundamentally, if a system is disturbed, does it return, or is it functioning maintained? So it's usually some like higher level property that is maintained through, in ecological systems, one of the primary mechanisms is reorganization of the components. So actually the higher level resilience is enabled by having multiple components that differ in how they respond to the shock. Some go up and some go down. Now, in a social system, maybe that's not quite so desirable, and actually one needs to have resilience of those components. So I think it's really interesting to think about actually what the source of that resilience is. Is it this diversity in responses, and we're willing to, or we're able to accept those changes in configuration and restructuring, or is it actually, does it need to be something else so that we don't actually get those undesirable changes? So I would say it's like resilience of what is really important as well.
Andrea?
So I wanted to come in with an additional aspect related to my own field of infectious diseases and immunology, where if you get a bug, the next time you'll actually be stronger.
Yeah.
So there's a book by a guy called Nassim Taleb. He introduces the concept of anti-fragility. And maybe we should be thinking like that, after COVID-19, how can we actually not just maintain function, but really following the concept of immunity, even be in a stronger position to respond. Yeah.
Great. Yes, here in the front.
Thank you for the panel. My name is Soledad Garcia Ferrari, and I am a professor in global urbanism and resilience. So I have some opinions about resilience I think is important to highlight. It's very difficult to think about those transformational changes that you mentioned before, Andrea, when we just look at resilience. What we need to think is how the underlying assumptions of a system can be questioned, and then how resilience can be perhaps a very, very initial stage for the future that we need to create, where there is more justice, as mentioned before, and where there is more inclusion and more participation. So in that context, in our research, which has been in urban areas, we noticed after the COVID pandemic a stronger involvement of communities, of the collective. So the notion of the collective. So you mentioned before the importance of the governments and the importance of the individual in the context of One Health. But I wonder, how are you perceiving and experiencing the notion of the collective and the function of the collective to create these transformational changes that we need?
Thank you. That's a good question. I see everyone thinking, like, how can we incorporate the collective? Or, well, this is already community, this is a collective, but like other collectives?
Yeah, well, I often wonder what I can do to halt biodiversity loss or climate change. And there are things I can do as an individual. But yesterday I was talking with someone who researches about transformative change, and she explicitly researches organization and communities, and she's convinced that actually that only through this kind of community formation and sharing can one create transformational change. So it's not my area of expertise, but I kind of started to gather that, yeah, that's such a powerful and necessary mechanism. Perhaps it's without that, it can't happen even.
Maybe just one word, which is empowerment. So the collective or the community needs to be empowered, not just to be part, but really empowered to go further. I'm not sure whether you thought, I mean, collective, of course, is not just communities, right? But this youth empowerment, community empowerment, to take ownership and to move it forward, I think is key to the collective overall.
I don't know if I read about this Una Europa example, nature to step. Does anyone know about this? Do you know, Elizabeth? In Finland, where municipal stakeholders, political decision makers, healthcare stakeholders, and universities, but maybe also communities work together on one health project. Could you?
The Finnish people are here. It's nature. It's nature to step.
Nature
I
to
think
step?
It's the Finnish
Anyone
program.
from Finland who can? I thought maybe it's a good example of a community that's involved in this project as well.
I understood it as a citizen science approach, but actually there is nobody from Helsinki here. So. Oh, yeah.
But maybe you don't know all the projects,
great.
Of course.
So maybe
It sounded like a really nice example of bringing these collectives and communities in to think about One Health solutions. But everyone should look it up. It's homework. Yeah.
It demonstrates the importance of trans and interdisciplinarity that was mentioned before.
You looked it up. No. Great.
Thank you, Olli Peltoniemi. I'm actually working as the dean of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Helsinki. So I think that if Topi is here, he could be better describing what has happened over the past few years. But we really wanted to push this One Health organization that we established at the university to make better use of the resources that we have at the university, because we have such an excellent university as University of Helsinki. We have all the necessary disciplines that you need to address the big questions of One Health that have been discussed, and we just wanted to push our faculties and researchers to sit together and think about this resilience and think about the society, think about health issues of animals and humans and the environment, and this could be. I don't want to say that we are yet there, because we have just started with this project. It's a really good, big one, and we have been discussing. I think that what one keyword that we need to bring up here is patience, because you really need to be patient to learn languages of each other. I would like to refer to what Jussi Uronen, one of our researchers that is active in between life science and social sciences, is saying that it takes actually 2 years to learn to understand each other and to learn the language, so that we really understand what we are all about. But this one question that has been I've been thinking about regarding this COVID-19, because I really agree that this is it was like the thing that was helping us a lot to establish One Health focus area within Una Europa. And I've been thinking about this when this resilience is exactly what it is all about. Because if you look at what happened in Wuhan, in China, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was about resilience of the wild species, and it was pushed too far. And then how the virus was entering Europe and how it was hitting Europe. It was hitting Italy first, and how I would say that the resilience of European Union was failing at that point. We as European Union, we were not.
Do you think we are more resilient right now? Do you think? Are we more resilient right now?
I'm not convinced. This is something that I would put up as a challenge for the Una Europa to think about that, and our social scientists especially, that we would be better prepared for the next one, so that we really would function as a European Union, not just leaving one country on itself and everybody thinking about their own borders.
Yes?
Yeah, if I may answer, because listening to all your contributions, it's about diversity and cooperation. These are the two ingredients, I think, also in complex systems, recovering from a stroke. And this is, I think, what Una Europa is about. So because it's very diverse universities coming together and cooperate. And so that this alliance, I think, as the president said, is really the coolest one, but it's maybe also the strongest one.
And the most resilient one?
Hopefully, hopefully.
Anyone else who wants to respond?
Yes. I wanted to say resilience is Una Europa. Because the fact that we are working like that together and in so many disciplines, Oli was the first chair of Una Europa, of One Health Una Europa. And Antonio, talking there, is in our scientific committee. So look how many disciplines and different inputs from many different places we are having. So I think that's really the key. Today, in the present today, is that resilience is in Una Europa.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Anna-Mari from Helsinki, and just adding to Olli's comments, I could give an example of one of the now what we have done with our project. So the project is called Resilient and Just Systems, and my background is a veterinarian. And in the kickoff seminar, we had some ethnographic studies presented for us, and for me, it's really difficult because I'm coming from the life sciences. But then I got an invitation to give a commentary talk to ethnography studies talking about Palestinian, Israeli settler ecology, something that is not really common to me, but they were talking about, for example, from Gaza, the stray dogs, that they are escaping from Gaza, going to the Israeli side, and we were talking about the One Health over there, and I learned a lot about politics and everything, so it's really, we are coming together with all these different aspects. And another one that I learned from our kickoff was that there was a talk about food safety and security, but talking about food and water nexus. And I didn't really know that when we talk about water scarcity, really the majority of the global water is used for the food production. Yeah. And we know about hygiene and sanitation and need for those, but for me it was like a new learning thing that the food and water are really connected also. Yeah. So I think now we are trying to put the life sciences and social sciences together, but I think that we all need like patience, like Olli said, but also we need to be brave enough, because I was very nervous to give any commentary to any ethnographic studies, but yeah, I did it, and then somebody has to go under the bus for the first time.
Thank you. It's really brave of you to share this as well. Yeah, I think that's also returning, right? And most of you are really specialists in one field, and everything about X, and then some people start talking about Z or A or B, and you're like, oh, I don't know. But it's really important to keep sharing and learning, and also say I don't know anything, but I don't know anything. I don't know much about this topic, but I'm happy to learn, right? Just like Owen said as well. Do you want to respond to the comment, or yeah, Bruno? maybe?
I'm very proud of Anu. She's also in our staff steering committee, and she just coordinates a project between Una Europa and 5 African universities. And we have 3 people involved, and one of the person is social scientist. So we are bringing this philosophy with social scientists and ethics to 5 different African universities.
Yeah.
And one of those universities is Makerere.
This is so interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. Let's see if we have more comments or questions.
Yes, thank you. Jan Frey from Zurich. As you're talking about resilience, so I think there are different dimensions, and we heard a lot about the communities and society. If I look into this venue here, I think there's a certain proportion which is not here, a different proportion, but I would like at this moment to focus on the younger ones. And the other dimension, back from generation, or focusing a little bit on the global south also, and then there is a converging line here. If I look to Uganda, a huge proportion of the next generation is really the younger generation, young minds. So we are talking in universities about education. Of course, these persons, they will arrive here, they are already somehow educated, hopefully. But what do we do with the whole generation? They don't have such a brilliant access. They don't have access to the coolest system we have, or alliance. Okay. Thank you. So this is a question to all of you.
Yeah. What do we do with that generation that has no access to this knowledge or this cool?
Well, we are doing this in Africa as well, but what we have to go outside of the universities as well. You know, so outreach is very important, because to educate from the universities to society. So when in my work in Ghana, what we go is we go from our universities in Ghana, and with the students we go out to the community. That's what you said. It's very important to involve them, and there we teach them about hand washing, whatever, one healthy environment, that you have to take care also of the environment. So I think the universities have to also go out from the universities and reach the communities in Europe, but also in the South.
Yeah. I have a brief contribution, but actually it will be a question to my colleagues in Europe. In Uganda, especially for research institutes, we have intentional programs to reach out to high schools to inspire those students. And usually we want them to come to science, unfortunately. But I wonder whether this alliance will also be intentional in not waiting for people to come to your universities, but really reaching out to the high schools, and I don't know what the system is, junior schools, so that these prestigious universities that young people aspire to reach out and have programs in schools.
That's a good question.
Maybe just to add to this, Jan, so it was about the global south and the youth not having access to all this information. Yeah. So, yeah, well, I respectfully disagree a little bit, because the digitalization in many African countries is actually very advanced. It's almost a breeding ground of digital health, because of the challenges they have to overcome. And the young generation is very clever when it comes to navigating the internet. So it's up to us what we put in the open space. The right information should be there, or correct information should be there, and the right information. So almost in the global north, if I may say so, I don't actually like the two expressions, but in high-income countries like Europe, the States, we have a lot of theoretical approaches, but we miss as you said, Jan, out of the classroom, right? And I want to point to also Uta, because you're there, the living lab. This is really what we can learn from the Global South as well, that you have something where you can apply it to immediately. So it becomes much more vivid and really ingrained, because you see the needs immediately. So it's really this exchange between the Global South and the North, youth, but also elderly, it doesn't matter, also school children, that some have exposure and practice experience out of the classroom, and we are looking for that out of the classroom experience, because we just have the theories and we don't even know if they work because there's not a lot of evidence. So I think if young generation is interested, they can have access to information via digital One Health approaches, but it's up to us really how we shape it. Thank you.
Could I quickly add also an into the classroom? Because one of the hardest things is to have actual science results and evidence get into the regular curriculum at European high schools. So this is very necessary, where the disciplinary silos are even stronger and very traditional contents are taught, and they are all justified. But to have this systemic approach that we all agree on also in schools here around us is, I think, also very important.
And then you need very interdisciplinary bachelors, because otherwise you go to classrooms and you're like, be interdisciplinary, do something with One Health, and then they're choosing a bachelor and they're like, where's my bachelor in One Health, right? Okay, Owen?
I can tell you two things that were really important for us when we were reaching out to the younger generation about biodiversity, why biodiversity is important. One was go to them and go to places that are cool. So music festivals, for example.
Yeah.
That was done in the UK. We did something similar here, going to places where they are. And the other is don't tell, but ask.
Yeah.
So start conversations by asking what is important for you in your lives. There's a lot of biodiversity kind of around us. We've got some displays and things like that, but what's important for you? And then try and get into a conversation about what is important to you, to them. And so ask, don't tell.
Yeah. Let me also ask, there are some students here in the audience. Maybe they have an advice as well, right? And we have a question as well.
Thank you for the great discussion. My name is Saskia Degani. I'm head of the Carrium Center for Health Literacy, which is right over there. And my question is, I waited for it until digitalization and digital transformation comes up, and artificial intelligence was not mentioned so far, but what I wonder is digitalization is often the solution, but that all that data has a lot to do with energy consumption and energy sources, which do impact climate, and that is also one aspect of One Health. How do you integrate that?
It's a dilemma, right? Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah.
So this is the art of integrating health into those discussions. Like at the EU level, there is not a strong emphasis on health, but there is a strong emphasis on the Green Deal, on energy, on pandemic prevention, right? But integrate health discourse into the larger, also climate change, biodiversity loss, the transformations, try to, with a narrative, but also policy briefs, advocacy, civil society advocacy, you name it, communications around specific topics, always mention that One Health needs to be part of all policies, needs to be part of all discourses. Even if it's tax or trade, One Health needs to be there.
Andrea?
Just a short comment. So we run a Center of Excellence in Bioinformatics and Data Science at the Institute, and I really appreciate the energy costs as a budget holder of this data center. What we're doing now is to install solar panels, because there's plenty of sunshine in Kampala. And just to say that we are exploring this route so that we can reduce the energy costs for this center.
So you should take all of this into account when you're using it. Do we have a student who wants to comment? Great. Over there.
Hello. My name is Elon Wright. I'm from University College Dublin. I'm a student board member.
Welcome.
So I actually had another question, but it does kind of tie in. I study global studies, which is a incredibly interdisciplinary degree. It does not focus excessively on STEM and the sciences in general. It is more social sciences and humanities. But one of the things I find quite interesting is the history of science and how the two can interact. And I believe that everything about this should be more integrated, because I have found it's been a very expanding degree for me to pursue. My question is, you have talked a lot about how the emphasis on interdisciplinary solutions within One Health, but I'm kind of curious about what you think the role for looking at the causes and issues in global health is from the interdisciplinary perspective. Personally, I think a lot about it in reference to conflict and how war impacts health and how scarcity and extractivism impacts health. You see it in Ukraine, you see it in Palestine, you see it in Congo and Sudan and Haiti, and you think it's really relevant to the conversation, and I think when you're coming from a Western perspective, it's really easy to overlook it. Yeah. So I'm curious on all of your guys' opinion upon it.
Is it really part of the One Health approach? Yeah?
This is a very good question. I can't remember the article, but it was shown that certain interventions work according to culture, but also to the history within that culture, colonialism, etc., and the way that people will accept interventions or One Health interventions. So that to me was really an eye-opener, that it's not just about the cultures that we see these days, it's about the trajectory. And there's something different, but maybe it's helpful. And I'm a neurologist, so of course I'm interested in brain health. And Andrew and Uttal, we just walked past a poster announcing a discussion, I think, in 2 days. You should go there. It's about the evolutionary psychology and the impact on brain health. So through evolution, how our societies were shaped. You know that much better. And what the reaction and the response to certain extrinsic interventions or stimuli, intervention that we would like to actually implement in those societies. So what we need to take into consideration is so much more than what we see on the surface. And this is why we need the collaboration with you. But maybe you can even react to this.
But that's more on the psychological side, maybe, or the history of science. What about the scarcity problem that leads to war and conflict? Does anyone?
Yes, well, I can only. I mean, I think we all agree that conflicts have many different aspects, and one of them is the psychological one, but there are many others on the scarcity, on the health, on the migration of people, migration of animals. So it's really has a huge impact, and this is very much taken into account in the One Health concept today. And another word that brought me to climate change that we have not talked about, but it's also a global scenario that we are bringing also together, because there's really changing many things, including also movement of people and mental health, and obviously diseases. And I want to talk less about diseases. We have talked, I think, too much.
Andrew, you want to?
I'm not an expert in this area, but I just thought I'd have a cheeky moment. Because you raised conflict, right? And you're talking about causes. So I was trying to recall the name of a historian. He wrote a biography on the Secretary of State from the US who has just died. What's the guy's name? Yeah, so he wrote a biography on Chesney. He's a very famous historian. I've just blanked out on his name. And he was basically saying sometimes it's the causes of things is very complex, and we think we understand and we don't. And he gave the example of the First World War, which he says really took people by surprise, because he was looking at the stock exchange in the UK before World War I, and there was no evidence on the stock exchange that a war was coming. So my cheeky thing is that I think, sometimes we think we understand causes, and maybe we don't.
Okay. We have room for one question. So who wants to have the opportunity? Yes, in the back, to ask the last question.
Hello, I'm Katja from KU Leuven. I work in service learning, so it's a pedagogical approach where students go out in society, in the communities, they immerse themselves in the context, in the reality, to really understand what is going on, where the issues are coming from. So one of the underlying principles of service learning is that there is this horizontal dialogue with society. And Andrea, you mentioned several times today humility. And so I'm just wondering, as scientists, we want to be the best. As Una Europa, we want to be leading. But how, as scientists, do you go into society with this humility that in this conversation, you're not only bringing the knowledge that you have into the community, but you also learn from the community and take that knowledge with you, that when you go back into the ivory tower, or how you would name it, that is becoming part of the research, and that flows back into your teaching, and it goes back into society, and that we come to this integral education that serves society, it serves the students, it serves your research. So I was just wondering if you would comment on that and maybe consider a pedagogical approach as that.
Thank you for your wonderful question.
Maybe just as a reaction, when I read Evelyn's questions on the how can we really collaborate, I wrote down modestly. So but isn't it about curiosity? Because once you're curious about with whom you're interacting and how he or she will react, that helps, isn't it? And that reduces all feeling of superiority or also special knowledge. I think curiosity is the key, and that is luckily something we all share.
Yeah.
Well, I think it needs a bit of a paradigm shift in what in us as scientists. I mean, I was talking about what was successful for us, and that was to go out and ask first. And that means like we don't know what's important. But when I do research, my job is to tell about the results. And so, you know, can we wear two hats, or do we need to just change the hat completely? But we had a lot of success. But it did take actual training of the researchers. We didn't just send them out there and say ask. It was actually there were multiple day workshops that the researchers went to in order to be able to change their way of thinking about what their job was. Yeah.
There was also downstairs you can fill in like questions like, if universities are not about research and teaching, what is their function in society? And I saw all kinds of questions that are, or answers that are similar to what you also said as well. And one of them was also make mistakes, right? It's I like that one. Maybe a final remark by someone on the panel? Yeah.
I wanted to mention that, you know, I think there are also formal structures for getting community input. I'm aware of community advisory boards. We have one where we have members of the community, and when you have a new research idea for a specific geographical area, you basically you use that structure to kind of make inquiries, and so that their inputs are part of the design of the study. So at least from the sciences, we have this kind of structures for engagement.
Yeah. Andrea? Yeah?
I really loved your comment. I think this is wonderful. It doesn't work all the time, but I think we have to retrain ourselves to understand that we make experiments and we try to reproduce, but it's all about implementation and the context. I think we haven't mentioned contextualizing our results yet. And the feedback, and this is actually a very attractive research branch that is currently developing, is implementation science and implementation research, which is inherently transdisciplinary and, of course, interdisciplinary. So I think your observation was a very good closing observation. Thank you.
It's actually a really wonderful last question. Yeah. Bruno, you want to say something? No?
No,
yeah?
this is what Una Europa is about, to bring people from different areas. Yes, sorry, but Una Europa is very important. It's really important. I don't know if it, but I think really that this unity is very important. And so this transdisciplinary communication, we get it through getting and together people from very different areas. So this is really enriching. Normally you tend to go to a community and say, I'm going to teach you microbiology, I'll go back. But now then you tell us, no. You could go, but you could bring back many things that you learn from the community, and this is really eye-opening. And we are experiencing this transdisciplinary communication and new flourishing areas of all what we do every day when we are talking together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. May I have a warm applause for my resilient panel? Thank you. And of course, you have been resilient as well today. Sometimes it was kind of warm as well, right? So you have to be resilient to survive that. I'd like to tell you, enjoy your evening. Maybe you have dinner plans, maybe not yet. Make sure you enjoy your dinner. And there's a special dinner as well at the Faculty of Law, if you have a silver sticker. And if you're wondering where the Faculty of Law is, just follow someone who has a wonderful blue skirt. They will take you there. May I thank all of you for your attention today and your wonderful questions, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Share the opportunity with you.